Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic, let's do it. What's the most unexplainable thing that's ever happened to you? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. This doesn't exactly rise to an X-Files case, but I have no idea how I got home from a bar one night. I was living on my own and went out with some childhood friends and my brother. The next thing I remember is waking up in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. My brother and friends were freaking out because they had no idea what happened to me. They didn't really understand what happened. They said I had 2, maybe 3 drinks that got me really drunk, then started making plans to leave when I disappeared. I drove to the bar that night, so they went outside to see if my car was still there, which it was. My parents said 4 guys they had never seen carried me out to the door and then helped me up the stairs. My parents knew the people I was out with, including my brother. These were different people. About an hour after I woke up at my parents' house, I got a message from one of the bartenders there, whom I was friendly with. She told me she thought I was drugged. She said I had like 2 or maybe 3 drinks when I suddenly looked like I was blacked out drunk. The next thing she knew, 4 guys she didn't know were helping me out the door. The crazy part, though, was that the bar and my apartment were a solid 45 minutes from my parents' house. I have no idea who the guys were, what, if anything, was given to me, why something would have been given to me, or how they even knew where my parents lived. I don't believe anything was stolen, nor was I injured in any way. My mom said the guys who took me to the door were normal-looking guys, about my age and perfectly polite to her. In the years since that happened, nobody has said, "Bro, you were wasted that night. We took you home." I just have no idea what happened. I was a roofer, highly skilled in the trade. I was loving life, working hard, and planning my future. I just set up a roofing business too. I woke up one morning itching everywhere, looked in the mirror, and seemed a bit red. I went to work as usual, thinking the sunburn itches so bad. Following a few days, I became slow and dreary, itching like my skin was on fire, as if thousands of bees were stinging me over and over. My skin had become covered with a hard, disgusting rash. Then came the boils all over. After going to my GP and then being sent to a specialist, it turned out I became allergic to the sun. After 28 years of being a normal, outgoing, outdoors kind of person, overnight, unknowingly, my life flipped. No more going out in the daytime without major coverage and special sun cream. I've never been given a proper answer to why this happened to me. This disease, or whatever it's classified as, has ruined my life. I was told to just avoid exposure to the sun. This was so unexpected and unexplainable. I'm in a better place now, 4 years after it happened, but not one day goes by without me questioning why. I lost my ATM card and went to the bank to have it replaced. I told them what I wanted the PIN to be, and they told me that the PIN would be randomly assigned and mailed separately. And once I received both, I could change the PIN to what I wanted it to be. The randomly assigned PIN was the one that I wanted. I woke up from a nap laughing explosively and uncontrollably. It was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. I couldn't catch my breath, and I rolled onto the floor clutching my chest. I got so scared and ran to my dad while still laughing. I believe he thought I was joking around, but I sat on the floor and it slowly stopped. Never happened again. I have a few. The first is when I worked at a grocery store as a teen. The manager called it Code G, which was everyone bringing their trash to the compactor. The manager, who was also a family friend, so joking around was normal. As I'm throwing trash away, I sense something's about to be thrown at me and I duck. Rotten food passes over my head. My manager friend is shocked and questioned how I knew he was about to throw something at me, and I just said I had a feeling. The next scenario is saving my grandmother's life. I used to visit her every couple of months or so. It wasn't a far drive, 30 minutes. One day I was at Walmart and randomly thought of her. Walmart was about halfway to her house and I didn't buy perishables, so I figured why not stop and see her. As I pull into the driveway, she's sitting on her front porch. She looks up at me and looks back down. I immediately know something is wrong because she always jumps up to greet me. As I approach, I noticed her lips were blue and started calling 911. Her lungs were 80% filled with fluid and had 2 collapsed heart valves. The paramedics told me if I got caught at a red light, she'd probably be dead. This was around 80 years old. She passed away at 95 a year ago. Sometimes those little tiny hits of precognition are interesting. Some people chalk it up to deja vu, some people chalk it up to something else, but either way it happens, and it's pretty cool. I was in high school at a friend's birthday party. Her parents booked us a suite at a resort hotel, the kind with a mini water park you can use for free if you're staying in the hotel. It was a pool party sleepover, and we got the whole suite to ourselves, though her mom was in an adjoining room. We were staying up late watching movies. One was a horror movie about a murderer, and we were doing what teenage girls do, getting scared of nothing. Somehow, we got it in our heads that there was a killer outside waiting to break in and murder us. Me, having to be the brave little skeptic, decided I would prove to my friends we were safe by opening the curtains. There was a man standing right outside, looking in through the window. I closed the curtains quickly, and we were all screaming. Her mom came rushing in. We told her what happened, and she checked outside, but there was no man. To this day, I wonder what that man was doing. Was he really a murderer who got scared away by our screaming? Was he some guy passing by who happened to look over at the exact moment the curtains opened? Did we just imagine the whole thing from sitting up and talking about how scared we were? Was he a Peeping Tom trying to catch a glimpse of 14-year-old girls in pajamas? Did he overhear our conversation and think it would be funny to play a prank on us? Spooky, LOL. I was at my house after hanging out with my family all day. It was about 11 when I came in. I started taking my medicine and heard a low, creepy voice say, "Fire, there's going to be danger. Meds are for acne." I was so scared I thought my dad was messing with me, but no one was in the house, absolutely no one. And the next day we hung out again. It was 12 when we came in to get more drinks. We all smell this horrible stench of smoke. We check every normal space, microwave, oven, and fireplace. Nothing. We run downstairs and cannot find the fire. The smell is getting worse. It's in the basement because of the density of smoke. We call the fire department, and they find an electrical fire in our wall. It would have burned our house down if we went to bed and thought it was fine. Yeah, $12,000 in damages, and it's all fixed. I've never heard it again. About 10 years ago, my brother and I owned and lived in an old 2-story duplex. While watching TV one time, I heard what sounded like something dropping on the floor and then rolling across his living room. I texted him and asked what he dropped. His reply was nothing, but she heard the sound too, and it sounded like I pushed something against the ceiling. There's only about a foot of space between our two living rooms. A different time, I was camping with my wife and awoke around 2:30 in the morning with the worst headache imaginable, but it quickly subsided. My brother was planning on meeting up with us later the next day, but he called me in the morning to let me know he wasn't feeling well. I told him about my headache and he went silent. He told me he woke up at the same time with a massive headache too. Neither of us are the type to play practical jokes or anything like that. It was weird. Many years ago, during my A-level final exams, I panicked like hell in the lead-up to the exam for one subject because I basically hadn't revised it at all, and it was my weakest subject. I'd gone through a phase during that school year of slacking off like mad, and it reflected in my grades all year, but the realization hit me in the week before this exam that I had severely screwed up. I wouldn't be able to pass, let alone get a good grade. I can still remember a single thing about that day of the exam. My friend later said I felt a bit off, more quiet than normal, but me. But I cannot recall anything at all about the day. I got an A on that exam. I still don't know how. I still have no decent knowledge of that subject. I walked into the exam room, wrote for 2 hours, and got an A. I was working in a lab that had skeletal remains, many of which were Native American ancestral remains. I was used to working with skeletons, cataloging and measuring bones and whatnot, and had never experienced anything that felt supernatural. This lab was created to repatriate the Native American remains that had been excavated locally and had been severely mishandled by the university for decades. I had a box that contained only a skull, and when I opened the box, I felt anger resonating from this skull. The entire time it was out of the box, it was like someone was screaming inside my head. I finished as quickly as I could and returned the skull to its place. I had nightmares for several nights and eventually told the professor in charge about it. She was a descendant of the tribe to which these remains belonged, and she took me very seriously. She added extra offerings to the altar in the lab and smudged the place, burned white sage, and the nightmare stopped. Never before nor after have I had such a visceral experience. So far, cancer. I'm 21. When I was 20, I was diagnosed with bladder cancer. If you know anything about bladder cancer, it's very common in people who are 70 plus. For people my age or younger, it's exceptionally rare. It's so rare that from all of recorded medical history until 2010, there were only 125 cases worldwide of bladder cancer presenting in a patient aged 20 and under. Now, I could think of a lot to explain why I got cancer, but even my doctor was baffled. It took 7 months to diagnose because all my doctors were like, there's absolutely no way you have bladder cancer. It's unheard of. Fast forward to the same doctor telling me that in all his years as a urologist and all the thousands and thousands of patients he's seen with bladder cancer, I was the longest by a long shot. Nobody that came to mind has come close to being as young as I am with that disease. He wants me to take part in a genetic testing so I can know to look out for cancer in my children one day. And because the medical field knows so little about bladder cancer at my age, they might learn something from my case. The good news is that in just about every single case of bladder cancer at my age, including myself, it's literally almost always curable and may even be one of the easiest cancers to beat. During my fight with it, I did a ton of research, and I couldn't find one case where somebody my age died with it, not one. It was scary nonetheless, but I'd been here for about 6 months since my surgery and chemo. I had my 3-month checkup about a month ago, and so far, so good. I was told it's unlikely to ever return. The most unexplainable thing that's happened to me is getting an extremely rare cancer. This happened just 6 months ago, but I had intense dreams for about 2 weeks straight of the same man that I had never seen before in my life. In every single instance that I saw him, he was trying to hurt or kill me. Literally every time I slept, he was suffocating me with a bag, slipping something in a drink, finding my house and stalking me, etc. After dreaming about him for 2 weeks or so, I met this man at a gas station. We didn't talk to each other. I knew nothing about him, but he was there, and I could immediately tell it was him. I finished pumping my gas and got in my car, and this man came up in front of it, putting his hands on the hood and just staring at me through the windshield. It was insanely creepy, and I couldn't leave. It was late at night, so there weren't many people nearby, and I just got this horrible gut-wrenching feeling of wanting to puke because something was very wrong. I honked my horn super loud, and he flinched and pulled away from my hood, so I took the opportunity to drive away. I have no idea who he was. I had never seen him before in my life, but for some reason, I saw him harming me in my dreams, and I genuinely think that my fight or flight response in that moment and honking at him saved me from whatever he was going to do while camping out in front of my car. I had a dream that I was a Japanese boy in a poor fishing town growing up in the 80s. I worked on the boat with my dad, and we lived in this small house with my sister and mom. I went to school, made friends, graduated high school, met a beautiful woman, and became a successful businessman. We had a son together who was 4 years old, and I loved the life I lived. I was in my mid-30s when I woke up. I don't know how my brain dreamed up an entirely different life on its own. Most of my dreams are insane, yet this one felt so normal. I remember how the boat looked, how poor I was, how I eventually got some money, and how I watched technology evolve in front of my eyes. For context, I'm 24 years old, and when I had this dream, I was like 15 or 16. I'm a white guy who's never been to Japan. When I was 21, my at-the-time boyfriend, now my husband, had moved to the outskirts of Pittsburgh. I was in the process of preparing to move there myself and came down for a visit. The first night, when we were sleeping, I was grabbed on the arm and pulled out of bed by a black figure. I screamed and fought, and when I came to and woke up, or whatever you call it, I was standing out of the bed right where I'd been dragged to. Everyone convinced me it was a nightmare, and I put it out of my mind until I moved into the house. I lived there for about a year, and in that year I had this amazing black figure come to me in my sleep multiple times. Sometimes they would stand on the other side of the room, sometimes standing right over me or grabbing me. Once they spoke and told me they wanted to bring me to hell. Eventually, we did move, and once we did, I never had those nightmares again. No matter how illogical, I cannot figure out how I would only have night terrors in one house without some supernatural explanation. I was still living at my parents' house, and around 2:30 a.m. our Rottweiler was sitting at the back door barking, wanting to go outside to use the bathroom. I threw on a hoodie and sweatpants and walked to the back door, where I found her growling and staring out the window. It was a little unnerving, but because of the dog, I felt safe enough to step out with her for a minute or two. As soon as I opened the door, she bolted to the corner of our property. On the side of the lawn chose, we had one standalone lamppost, providing just enough light to get a rough idea of the landscape. I started making my way over to the dog, thinking that she didn't need to use the bathroom at all and just had the zoomies or something like that. So my plan was to just grab the dog and go back inside. Suddenly, the dog does a complete 180 and hauls ass down our property line in the direction opposite of what I was facing. I turned around to start following her again, and I stopped dead in my tracks. There was this tall and thin white figure levitating about 5 or 6 feet off the ground in our yard. The fear flooded my body instantly. It didn't appear to have any limbs from what I saw in a panic, and it almost looked like it was moving with the wind. The dog was following it, jumping and barking in an aggressive manner. The adrenaline and fear coursing through my body gave me the strength to sprint over and scoop up this 80 to 90 pound dog and dead sprint to the back door. I told my family the next morning, and they seemed pretty spooked, but they also weren't taking it super seriously. I have no idea what I saw.